Welcome to Creative Cooking. Today we're making lasagna, but not just any lasagna, we're making roll-ups. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a good tomato sauce, that's just the marinara, and we're going to use meatballs. I made these meatballs to make meatball grinders, and I made a lot of them so I could make this lasagna. This is how my mother used to do it. Instead of making a bolognese or otherwise a meat sauce, we like to crumble the meatballs into the tomato sauce. And then we need to make the cheese filling with some parsley. It's fresh from the garden. And we're going to measure out some ricotta cheese, or as my friends would call it, ricotta. Right? If you're Italian American, that's probably how you say it. And that's how they say it in Sicily, I think. So we want to measure out about 16 ounces of the ricotta cheese. 16 or a little bit more, it depends how cheesy you're feeling today. And we're going to add an egg. Now the egg, it helps to thin out the cheese so it's more mixable, but also becomes a binder as it cooks. So the first thing you do is mix the egg in with the cheese. It softens everything up. And then we add the rest of the ingredients, which includes some Parmigiano Reggiano, or any Parmesan cheese that you have, about a quarter cup of that, a quarter cup of freshly chopped parsley, and then 1.5 cups of mozzarella. The mozzarella and the ricotta and the parmesan along with the egg and everything else, it's just going to melt up beautifully inside that lasagna, and you'd be surprised it holds on to a pretty nice texture. And this is a very authentic way of preparing the ricotta. Then you got to boil the noodles. The noodles, now, there's nothing scary about it, just don't force them in. Get it up to a good boil with some salt and add 13 noodles. And there's a reason for having that 13th noodle in case you get one that breaks. And it's also for what I call the baker's dozen. You go ahead and drain them and then keep them in cold water until you're ready to use them. Now to make the roll-ups, it's pretty easy. You just take your noodles, spread them out like this, and add 1/4 cup of that cheese mixture onto each noodle. You should have enough to make at least 12 of these roll-ups, if not 13. I always go a little heavy on some of the ingredients so I can do that baker's dozen, 13th noodle in this case, right? And then you want to take some of that meat sauce and just put it down the middle, about a tablespoon, maybe a heaping tablespoon of the sauce. You notice it's kind of thick and chunky. I ended up actually adding some water to it just to thin it out because the meatballs, well, they absorb some of the moisture, right? Okay. So anyways, I'll show you how to do this one more time. You don't want to put a lot in the middle, just a little bit right down the middle. And then after that, you start to roll them up. Now what you're going to notice here is that as you roll them, that meat sauce and cheese starts to spread out towards the edges. That's why you didn't have to get too fussy about spreading it out. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? It just pushes it right out to the edges. It's awesome. I'm going to show you one more time. In fact, I enjoy doing this so much, I'm going to show you a third time. Or maybe you'll just skip over this part of the video. But that's okay. Once you get the hang of it, you're going to find that building a lasagna this way is just as fast as the traditional way of just layering them out in the pan. You want to put about 1/3 of your total sauce with the meat at the bottom of the pan, okay? And you're going to notice it's pretty pasty, like I said. After this point, I ended up adding a little bit of water to thin it out, just making it easier to spread around. Because believe me, there's plenty of moisture between the noodles, the cheese, and all of this, that when this goes into the oven, everything is going to cook, which is why you never overcook your noodles, okay? And then, depending on the size of your pan, you should be able to get about 3 across. Now I'm going to note that this is not a traditional lasagna pan. Lasagna pans are typically made out of aluminum or even steel, and they have higher sides. But this is the pan I have, and it works out pretty good. And you'll notice I have exactly 13 rolls. Okay? Oh yeah. And then just put the sauce on top, all of it. Put it over the top, make sure there's enough for each one, and then whatever's left over can fall down on the sides. Oh, this is a really hearty lasagna, believe me. And what's interesting about how this is made is that you can serve it when it's bubbling hot. So go ahead and top that off with about another cup of mozzarella. You can put more, you can put less. But you gotta make sure you top it with cheese. Absolutely. You gotta top it with cheese. And then cover it up with some foil. I don't know of too many pans that actually have a cover. So cover it up nice and tight. And pop that in the oven at 375 degrees for about 45 minutes. All right, and after 45 minutes, remove the foil. You don't have to take it out, just use your tongs, pull the foil out, right? It's a lot easier. See it all bubbling up in there? And the whole point of this last 10 minutes really is to brown the top. And look at how it comes out. You don't have to cut it, and it doesn't fall apart. It just maintains its shape on the plate, even though it's super hot. You know, usually you have to let the stuff cool down for a bit. Not this stuff. And it was good. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you join us each week for more great videos made for people who like to cook. Until then, ciao. And I'll bet you thought I was going to say bon appetit.